Hey, good afternoon. I'm Brian Martindale from Kidneys for Kids. Today we're doing some volunteer work for our friends at Camp Fishtails in Pinconning, Michigan. This is a beautiful outdoor, all-accessible camp for children and adults with disabilities. And all through the summer and through the year, Camp Fishtails hosts groups and campers and gives them equal access to a beautiful wooded setting and lake and everything that everybody can do. So today we're very proud to be up here helping you out with our experience, and I'm painting all the doors in the main lodge for Camp Fishtails. So today I'm going to show you how to properly paint a door. First of all, these are metal doors, and I properly cleaned all of the surfaces and sanded with a power sander, because these doors have had a lot of lines in them from being previously painted with just a brush and not a roller on the flat surfaces. So we're going to try to correct that today in the look and give them a brand new look, as I'll show you after this, as I've done in the front of the lodge, to all of the main doors out there, taking this from this blue to a green. So let's get going and let's show you how to properly paint a door. So again, the surface has been all properly prepared, and we're going to do our cutting in like you do in any project with all of the trim. In this case, first around the door, and then all of the window trim around the knobs and around the kick plate on the bottom before we roll it at the end with a smooth roller to give it a factory finish look. So let's get going. Now, when I was young, I went to a special camp called Spring Hill Camp up in Everett, Michigan, which is a couple hours from here north, and it was in a wooded setting. It was a religious camp for our church. Our church actually started back in the 1970s, and it still exists today. And again, it's an all-accessible camp for children in this case, and there they can learn about living outdoors, staying in different campsites. They'll learn archery, they'll learn riflery, as far as marksmanship, they'll learn canoeing, survival skills for outdoors, and now they include camps for computers, music, and athletics, I should say. And so that was my experience growing up, and one thing that drew me to Shannon Forsey and learning more about her and their mission here to give equal accessibility to adults and children who have disabilities in one way or another, and give them a wonderful week when they come up to visit, and they can participate, like I say, in activities they could sometimes not otherwise have accessible to them. And that's very important, you know, helping somebody, especially if it's a younger person or child, young adult, helping them feel welcome, helping them feel equal to you know, their peers, and comfortable in you know, just being able to do these things they have to watch usually and they can't participate in. And here they have the equal opportunity of children or adults that don't have disabilities to access the wonderful facilities they have up here, and learn crafts, arts, and cooking, and just all sorts of computers. They have computer classes up here for the kids and young adults that they work with in the lodge, and all the outdoor activities. A beautiful lake over here that I'm looking across the Chevy Equinox that I'm driving over there, that they can canoe and swim in. And it's just, like I say, a wonderful, peaceful, wooded setting. Very quiet. Moved just a little bit from everything else. And just a wonderful place to carry on. Just a peaceful week and have enjoyment and inclusion for everybody. So, as you see, as I've been talking, we're going around our trim, and in this case, we're just doing the exterior of this door. So we're going to take the trim halfway in from the outside and just square it off. So when the door's open, then there's a clean line inside of the remaining blue on the inside. How you doing? Some of the campers and volunteers right there. And as you can see, we're covering very well for a dark color over a darker color. I'm using a very good Sherwin-Williams product. On the wood, I'm using a primer plus paint enamel. And then on the door, metal, I'm using a product called DTM, or direct to metal paint, which is meant to cover very quickly, and you'll see it is mostly covered in just the first coat. We'll just have a few streaks at the end that after we go ahead and do a couple more doors down the line, this paint dries very quickly, and we'll just come back and we'll go over what we call the flats, the places that will show streaks, or I have a show through a little bit of the color because of just having one coat. We'll go over all of those and then double check our trim to make sure everything is solid, and then we'll show you the finished results. We're very lucky here in Michigan to have all of this year round. I mean, the different seasons that we experience here in Michigan, the 4 seasons, and having accessibility to so much fresh water throughout Michigan, our lakes and streams, and then of course the Great Lakes that surround us. You know, we have the biggest freshwater supply anywhere in the United States, being surrounded by the Great Lakes, and then our Upper Peninsula, of course, bordering Lake Superior. As you can see, as I'm going down the trim, I pat off my brush to pat off the excess paint every time in my cut bucket, as we call it. In this case, I've just got a smaller handheld bucket. And then we just, without tape, you gotta learn to just use the straight line edge of your brush and make it run a straight line by just pressing out the bristles. It's just like anything else with practice. This is something I've done for over 30 years. So it comes very quickly to me. But the strokes up and down, each one has to count. You have to make each one work, not waste any of your time and your effort and your labor. And once you can do just a straight stroke like this, for example, cutting along that line under the door, once you can master that, a straight line like that, then you can get into things like these windows and not have to tape them off and spend more time on prep than actual painting. And as you learn, so over a period of years, it's like anything, you can take a door like this and in 30 to 40 minutes time, total time, have it cut in, the flat painted, and then come back a second time and at least go through your flats and recover them to get out any roller streaks that you'll see. I'll show you when we come back to the store. And then go around, and sometimes you'll need to go over your trim a second time. This particular paint, as I say, and I'm going back and forth between 2 buckets that you can't see, but the enamel especially covers the wood in one coat, and then going back to the direct to metal does an excellent job of covering the trim in one coat with the brush, and usually it's just 2 coats then with the roller to finish off. So here is the more complicated areas of this door. As you see over here, this door has a metal handle, and then we have a plate around the lock, and then the space under there. And most people are going to take time to tape off those areas and the round areas of the door. But I'll show you some secrets for sneaking your bristles up into there and not having to do that, and saving yourself time, which is money, and giving yourself more time to do more important things, like come to a camp like this, give a little time to volunteer and help these wonderful campers that come up here every summer enjoy a place that's just beautifully done, clean and neat, and a fresh coat of paint just gives a beautiful presentation to anything. And here's where you your experience when you practice what I'm showing you today will come in. Being able to take just those few bristles next to that window, lay them down, and then not touch the glass. While, here's an example for a cross brace. Now this is a very thin cross brace to do this on, with a 1/2 inch, or should I say 3-inch brush in this case. I was going to say 3/4 inch nap for my roller. But doing these, you've got to be able to just lay a few bristles down the side, top to bottom, come back up with a second stroke, and in those 2 strokes, you should have 90% of those areas, the areas that you're going after here, fill on the sides. Now, from back there, you can't see up close, but I've gone next to the window with just a few bristles in my brush, and I've been able to cover it from top to bottom, except for that one little spot there, in one coat. And now we're going to come back down the other side, the opposite, and we're just going to lay basically half of your bristles. Look at your brush and try to divide it in half with your eye. And you want to lay half those bristles. So just put enough pressure on to push half of them next to that window line. That's what I'm doing now, going back up. And if you do that and not put on too much pressure, then you don't have paint on the other side of the window that you've just done, and you're not spending time wiping paint off the window. As always with windows, it's no problem if you get paint on them. It obviously does wipe off. And sometimes it's easier, if you do get paint on the windows, to let it dry. Run your razor blade straight down the line first next to the edge of the window pane, and then scrape it off. Of course, wait till it's fully dry to the touch and not soft inside, because then it'll come right off for you with one stroke of a razor blade. We're using, of course, latex paint here, and you'll be done with your cleanup that way. So, of course, I'm able to do this. I don't expect everybody can run a window on their first try and run down what we call the mutton bars in between the glass and run a perfectly straight line up and down. But this is what we're getting done here today. And as you can see, we're actually moving pretty quickly for a window with this many mutton bars dividing the window sections, and making pretty fast progress. And that comes again with practice and not having to go back and clean up after myself. Now, as you'll see in a minute, it's going to get a little more difficult around this door handle, because now I've got to come down and run half of my bristles on the window trim, and then run the other half right next to my doorknob without touching it. And let's see if we can do this in one effort, one coat, one time, and not touch. And so it's a matter of manipulating or pressing out your bristles so they lay flat in this area next to the door. In this case, the plate around the lock, and then you're coming around and doing a half circle around the bottom of the pull. And if you can do that without touching, you save yourself even more prep time as far as no tape. You'll get a cleaner line. When you do have two things next to each other and you just can't make the space with your brush, unless you've got an artist brush for this, then you want to go just a piece of tape around there or a piece of tape in between. Press your brush into the tape, get your area, peel the blue tape off, you're good to go. In my case, I don't want to take that time because I'm trying to knock out at least 6 doors and frames up here at the camp, including the double doors I did just before making this video, in about 4 hours time. So that's a pretty good production rate for cleaning each door properly, sanding, and then cutting in, as well as the roll, the final roll of the door that will finish it off. So now I've gotten this spot all the way around the door. We filled in the little corner we missed earlier, and now Again, you're going to press out your brush into a semicircle and then come back and lay your brush flat along the top, in this case, of the plate around the handle. Press those bristles in there, don't be afraid. And then I see a little line I left down the side there, right next to the knob. And doing that, now I've gone all around the knob of the door without touching it. And then we're going to come back to the bottom. And again, run a semicircle, half circle around the round knob, the round handle. And there you're again around your pull for the door and the plate. And look at that. Now that area is all filled in, painted properly, not a bit of paint on the plate, window, and then the same thing down the side of the plate. You got to learn to run that brush and just press it out so it's straight, and there's just a couple bristles next to the edge, and voila, it's that easy. I know I'm out of the frame here talking most of the time in there until I come back over here. But here we go again. We got the rest of our mutton bars to do, and we should do them here more in order. I've been kind of skipping around to show you different things. So we do our mutton bars, our window areas, first around the outside of the trim, then we run a brush down the inside. Nice straight line, press it out, smooth out your edge, and now we're going to come along the sides of the window panes, and again you're going to lay your brush in there with just a few bristles, and you're going to press until it's touching right next to the window. You're going to run it one up, one down, and if it's a color that doesn't cover one coat, just leave it. Do not try to manipulate it if you've covered the whole surface in one coat. If it's going to show marks, and if it's going to be thin based on the color, you know, if you're doing a white over a dark color, you're going to obviously have 2 to 3 coats. Then just press it out, make it even. Make sure nothing's not smooth. That little bump out of there. There we go. And voila. And again, we got to go back and do the small mutton bars. You're going to press your brush right up in there. One coat, just a few bristles, right along that window line. And then before you get to the middle, you come back and do the bottom. Again, only a few bristles on there. Couple dips of your paint, knock off the excess. And you see I've run my bristles along the top, the bottom, and then I'm going to run it equally back and forth across the flat front. And there you are, covered top to bottom. We got one little corner to make up there, and we just jammed a little edge of our brush in there at a 45-degree angle. Corners, no. Now on the top, outside first. Let's do the top. Make sure it's completely covered. And then across to cover the top of the trim. Before we go down next to the window, we've got these bolts that stick out, and just pad your brush around them. When you've got an uneven surface like that, pat it in there and then smooth it. And you've got to keep an eye, if you're doing around screws, nuts, bolts, that after you pass by here, see this? Usually you're going to have just a little paint that's going to come off the bottom of, in this case, the outside bolts. And you just lightly run your brush around there. Take out the excess, because if you don't, you're going to come back an hour later and you're going to see drips. And we all hate to see drips in paint, whether you did it or somebody else. So, note to self, usually when I walk away from a door, I will walk back within the first few minutes and just take one final look up and down and make sure before the paint dries that I can still manipulate anything that might have set up. It may be a hot day, you know, there's so many different conditions we paint in it. Humid, maybe it's too humid out for the paint to set up properly. And the temperature maybe has affected your paint if you're painting in the cold. You can only paint latex paint down to 50 degrees safely. Don't try to use additives and go any farther than that. So, again, to do everything in order, we're going top to bottom. We're filling in all of the mutton bar areas one by one. Now, you're going to see this as you're watching go by in fast motion. This has taken me a total of about 20 minutes to do the cutting in of this door frame, and then cutting in the mutton bars is the most time consuming, and that's why you got to get to a point to where you can run your brush around these kind of edges, do it in one coat, one time. See here? Even us that have experience make mistakes. I touch the window. Take it off with your finger. Come back. Right back in there. Down that window. Straight down the mutton bar. Just one side at a time again. Just laying a few bristles in. Especially if you've got a bigger brush. This is a little harder to do. Most of you watching this would probably want to do this with a 2-inch wide brush instead of a 3, because you don't have the fat bristles that I've got to control here, and you've got less paint loaded to your brush coming off of it. So on skinny mutton bars like this, you've got more control and less chance for mess and wasted time. There you go. So we've gone top to bottom again, and we've done the front, and there's your finished mutton bar. And we're just going to go back into this one, see a little correction in the corner, leave a few bristles in there, and like that it's going. So let's finish these, and I'll show you the finished door at the end. That's how we like to do it. One smooth stroke up and down, and then do your flat. This one, do the bottom. So you got to look in there. Make sure your bristles aren't riding the glass. Just lay a few of them down, just enough so they touch that glass. Look at that. One little wipe. Okay. In the corners, flat, back and forth, glass inside and outside corner, outside of the trim first, all the way down here to where I left off. Get your excess across there. Make sure you fill that line, especially if you've got any kind of gap in the line coming down on the trim. If there's any more than a crack in the line, please caulk. Use painter's caulk. That'll dry for you in 30 minutes or less. Because those bigger lines, unless it's just a surface, very minor crack or opening, it's not going to fill with paint. And we don't try to fill things with paint. I'm going over something that's just on the surface and just needs a little element of the paint to fill in and then smooth out the surface crack. So always in your prep, make sure you're sealing things, especially if it has to do with windows and doors. So all this time you spent painting doesn't go to waste in a year because you haven't sealed things up and then moisture's gotten in and ruined your beautiful work. And we don't want that. Nobody likes to do things twice if they don't have to. And sometimes it's just taking time and using the proper methods as we're using here. This one we've already come down the inside. We did the outside, and now get that little excess paint off there. Don't leave any kind of lump. Do the flat last, and then again, just look in your corners, especially where you're having to press in your bristles at first, and just a corner to get that little area. There you go. That is old paint that was left here from when these originally were green to start with. And you don't want to leave those things, you want to take them off as much as you can. We'll come around this window at the end to make sure excess paint that was left for the first time it was painted is gone. So we have just a beautiful finished look to our newly painted forest green doors. All right. Here we go, see? That does happen. You just got to work with it. That's why you have a rag. Just like anything, sometimes no matter how much you practice, you get a mistake. As long as you're ready for it, you're ready for it right away. It's no big thing. That again will come back with a razor blade. Looks like we didn't quite get off all of the old paint during the prep. Just a few streaks left around, right around the mutton bars and the windows. So we'll come back and get rid of that after the paint is dry, so we don't leave any dried up chips of paint in our beautiful work there. As you can see, we're covering pretty well, pretty quickly. And in no time at all, this will be a beautiful green door. Okay, we're down to our last couple areas. So run the sides, because we've already run around the border on the outside of the trim. Run the insides, once up, once down. Smooth out any of your excess paint very lightly, putting your bristles in there to just touch one side of the mutton bars and not your glass. And you saw me going a little slowly earlier, but the closer you get to the end, and as you've covered all the areas around, you can see it starts to go pretty quickly. And for those of you watching that are practicing to do your own work, it'll come in no time at all to you. And once you can run a brush like this, your painting will actually become enjoyable. Imagine that. Now, painting as a whole has always been enjoyable to me, whether it be decorative. I've done things like gold leafing in buildings, different faux finishes. I've done painting that resembles marble, that you would think is a marble until you walk right up to it. And as well as regular finishes like this. And my forte during my active years as a union painter was the detailed work like this, that they needed done quickly and efficiently. And a lot of times I was called in because the place that I was working, the location I was working, had used non-union help. Or somebody, I should just say, not qualified. And then had to call us in to fix that work. So this is what I was used to doing during my active years, whether it was painting brand new or restoration painting as we're doing today, is fixing something that just wasn't quite done right. And as with anything, you know, it's always good to call a professional. And in my opinion, being a union journeyman and seeing the quality of work that I and my union brothers and sisters did over the years and the different projects I worked on, we have the proper training as union employees, and we're obligated to give our best. We promise that being union brothers and sisters, we'll properly represent our union, learn the proper skills we need to carry out our trade in a professional manner. And we continuously educate ourselves to learn the latest methods to be the best of the best, whatever trade you're in. You'll find that true with any union member. And we're trained extensively, and we're very dedicated to our work. And myself now, not being an active, even though I'm an active union member, actively painting, I had to stop, 2.5 years ago because of shoulder surgeries. And that's when my wife and I decided to form Kidneys for Kids. I gave a kidney 11.5 years ago to a Bay City girl who I didn't know, who had appeared on our local newspaper. Just happened that I looked at the newspaper the right day. And I had already been involved in testing for a young man who became a friend of mine back in 2011. And I was going to be a paired donor for him. And I passed all the tests to become a living kidney donor, but my young friend was disqualified because of a medical mistake. And so it was another year after that, I saw a story in our newspaper about a little girl. She was 10 years old, who needed a kidney transplant. And in the story, it said that I was her blood type. So, knowing I had a chance to directly donate to her, because for my friend, I didn't match him in blood type. So if you don't match, you can donate through a paired donation program, which means you give your kidney to somebody you may not meet. And in turn, the person you want to help, friend or family, or in this case, somebody I didn't know, if I would have had to do that for Jessica, I could have donated to somebody else, in this case in the University of Michigan program, and then I would have received what's called a voucher. And then that voucher I would have presented to Jessica and her mother, and that would have given her the best matched kidney that came next on the list. And but I did match her in this case. So we found out actually the day before Thanksgiving, and talk about a great day, in 2012, that I was a match for Jessica, and I stayed anonymous. They didn't know that I was the donor, which became a little surrealistic because after it was announced, people were trying to find out who I was. I went to a benefit for Jessica, the young girl I donated to. There's a benefit for her, and to raise money for her costs of treatment and going through the transplant. And I went to it as a seller of my clothing brand, Carmack Apparel. It's a brand of just t-shirts, hoodies, and other casual apparel my son and I started in 2009. And it's designs that represent or promote peace, love, unity, equality, and kindness. And so I took this brand, and I was one of the vendors the night of a benefit for Jessica. And I sat right behind her with this table full of my shirts and hoodies and her mother. And I knew I was the donor, and they didn't. And that whole night was very surreal, knowing that a few weeks later I was going to donate a kidney to this little girl, and they had no awareness. So a few weeks went by, and we were introduced just before Christmas. A friend of mine who worked for CNN at the time wanted to do a documentary on kidney donation. And I knew that, and so I talked to my friend Nancy, and she asked if she could be the person who introduced us live on camera if Jessica and her mom agreed. And I agreed. And I said yes, because I was dying to meet Jess and her mom. I didn't want to necessarily be public, but I knew after talking to Nancy that this could help other people if I did, this introduction, or we did this little, what was going to become part of a documentary. So, just before Christmas, in the store that I had built the day I got the newspaper, I'd run out of paint when I was building this store for my clothing brand. I built it myself with my construction experience. And then I walked to a store because I ran out of chewing gum, going back to the day I saw Jessica's story. And that was the only reason I saw her story. So anyway, my friend Nancy Skinner from CNN does this little introduction on one night, interviews them first, brings me on, and then introduces us on camera. And yeah, it was pretty dramatic, meeting Jess and her mom, and just knowing that a couple weeks away, I was going to give part of my body to this little girl, and it was going to work, I was told, and give her a new life. So we went through that meeting, and then on January 10th, 2013, our friend's restaurant, Vince Stewart, here in Bay City, who owns a few different restaurants, donated his limousine service and drove us to our surgeries at the University of Michigan. And so we drove down together and had an hour and a half to talk, really talk. And that was the first time, really, we talked before separating and going off. I went to the hotel at the University Hospital, and she went to Mott Children's Hospital. And then the next morning was our surgeries. And I didn't sleep much that night. In fact, I don't think I slept at all that night. I stayed in their inn next door. And, I had to contemplate to myself, about a few hours away, I was going to be prepped at 5 in the morning, that I was going to actually do this. And I had no second thoughts, but, you think about not the enormity of it, but, you're giving up part of yourself, and you're trusting, whether you're a Christian in God, or you're just trusting in general, whoever your creator is, that you're going to go through the surgery and live, and you're going to live normally with one kidney, and then this other person, in this case a little girl, is going to carry my kidney, hopefully for the rest of her life, and live the same normal life I'm living. So, we had our surgeries, January 11th, 2013, and both went well, or a complete success. And so that was on a Friday, and Sunday came around 48 hours later, and I was up. I'd already been walking within about 12 hours after I came out of anesthesia on late Friday night. And so Sunday I was fine, but they wheeled me over in a wheelchair, because this was across to the Mott Children's Hospital for where the U of M transplant is. And so I'm wheeled into this room, and the press is waiting. They had started following us since they found out I was the donor, and all this and that, our CBS station and MLive, our Bay City Times. And wheeled into the room, and here's this little girl that I'd seen 48 hours before. I'd ridden down with her, to give her a kidney. And she was pale white when I was riding with her, and her mom, and very frail looking for a 10-year-old. And here's this little girl laying in bed. She's asleep, hugging this teddy bear. And she's just full of life. It's pink in color. She doesn't even look like the girl I rode down with 48 hours earlier. And I'm like, wow, this really does happen. What a change. And going forward within the next year, I'd say, when I met Jessica, she had a speech impediment, and I didn't know that could be caused from different forms of kidney disease. And in her case, it was. And within a year after receiving my kidney, we started meeting, year by year for pizza parties and just little meetings. And she was speaking so clearly. And I'll go to now, she's 22 years old. She is going to college at Eastern Michigan University in Michigan here. And she is the part of our board of directors. She's a director for Kidneys for Kids, the organization I told you my wife and I started in 2022. And she's totally healthy. And seeing that, now she's as close to my wife and I like family. Whenever we see her, it's like seeing a miracle walking. And part of me, that could be around for much longer than me. I mean, part of me could be 120, 130 years old and live. And right now, there's no sign of rejection. And the average living kidney functions 15 to 20 years, but some have functioned over 50 years. So I'm very hopeful that part of me will be here long after I pass. And this is what I do with Kidneys for Kids. Part of it is our staff and we recruit living kidney donors for children. And we do it nationwide by taking a summer trip every year called Driving for Life. And I'll be leaving on June 10th, which is a week from this Monday, and actually leaving on the night before. And our first interview is going to be in Chicago, Illinois. What I do is I drive town to town, city to city, and I pre-arrange a TV interview, and I schedule it for a family who has a child that needs a kidney transplant. And we do this to get them their exposure because I have to see, or people have to see I have to have 50,000 people see a story of a child to get one living donor to come forward and actually become a donor. That's on the average because there's between 6,000 and 6,500 living kidney donors a year. And it really doesn't go up and down much farther than that. And we're certainly trying with legislation and laws and tax credits to further living donation. But those of us that have become living donors, we all tend to feel the same way, that we would do it 100 times again if we had 100 more kidneys. And so, like everything I do, I try to use to promote living kidney donation, in this case for kids, because we're finding kidneys for children up to 18 years old. And then in Michigan also, even though we're Kidneys for Kids, we help adults. The same way in Michigan, recruiting living kidney donors and providing microgrants up to $1,000 to cover costs not covered by insurance for a family. A child or adult experiences many costs: travel, extra medical supplies, having to stay overnight during transplant, sometimes for testing. A child usually has their dialysis, if they're not on dialysis at home, their dialysis is done at a transplant center or a hospital. So sometimes they have to travel hours, 3 times a week, if they're not at home, on home dialysis, like I said, to get this done. Or, that's what's saving their life until they get a kidney transplant. So that's our mission right there. I've gotten to tell you while I'm doing this door. And we are finished, actually, with the cutting end of the door. Let's just double check our mutton bars here. I've gone under and over every one, except as I was talking, I didn't do the backstroke, as we call it, on this one. And there with the backstroke, that one is finished. Our fronts are solid. We look down and just make sure our paint is dried now. So you can lay a flat on there if you don't feel like pushing your brushes into the center. If you've got a gap on your flat part, go back and look at your corners especially. Your corners are the easiest thing to miss on a window like this, or a door like this with mutton bars on the windows. And then there's another space I didn't check. So we're going to run up that one again, one more time, and back down. And there we've got our perfect corner. Again, without touching the glass. All of our spaces look good. As you can see, we've cut in everything that's closed around the knob. We're going to go one more little dab under the handle. Wipe off the excess paint. Now we've gotten our space up in there so it's solid without taping. I touched it, but there you go. One finger and no problem, it's off. Use your rag, don't be afraid to. And now, you can see, but my roller's been sitting down and prepared and ready. And so now, we're gonna roll this door, the flat, with a regular 9-inch roller and our paint. In this case, it's direct to metal paint. Unfortunately, I got a couple imperfections in the paint that had fallen in because I'm outdoors. Now don't panic when this happened, because it really didn't show up to me until I hit the surface of the door here. Now, here you can see down here, I've got a kick plate, what we call the steel guard you see at the bottom of commercial doors so you don't scuff them when your feet hit them, or your toes, or you go to kick it open basically because you don't want to touch it. That's why we call them kick plates. So we're painting down, and then after we spread our paint out, I should have said that, and I've gone sideways so I'm tight top and bottom. Then we smooth out our strokes up and down. And you can see our imperfections are mainly out of it now. I got a couple things just stuck to the roller here. I just take my finger and flick it out onto the rag. And then we're going to finish the top of the door with just a little stroke. The sides here. Get your paint off. Of the roller. I'm doing this, a lot of you would use a 4-inch mini roller as we call it, but I'm trying to do things in as few steps as possible to that. So in using the bigger roller, now you can see I've come down to the last year I painted, and then we're going to just roll back as smooth as we can so we're not leaving roller marks that'll show up later. Now, with a darker color, many times you will get roller marks, little spaces or little areas where you can see you've started and stopped your roll. And we're going to come back and look at that in about an hour. And anywhere we have roller marks, because this door will be properly dried and set off and ready for a second coat with this type of paint that we're using, and the temperature outside today, we're in the mid-70s. It's just perfect weather for outside paint, very luckily. So now we've got a nice smooth finish over all the areas you could see were just previously brushed. I think this whole door was brushed at one time top to bottom, where it should have been rolled. Because we like, when a door comes, like say from the factory, and see if you got a little mark, a little leaf from outside, whatever got in your paint, just take it out with your fingernail, wipe it, use your rag, don't be afraid, wipe it off, and there you go. Now we're going to come back and look at this door in about an hour. Get that last little imperfection out of there. Say, just give it a good look over. Stand back and give your door just one good look over before you walk away. Now make sure there's nothing dripping, there's no heavy marks that are going to sag. Look at your strokes and make sure they look smooth all the way around. And as you can see, we've got a beautifully painted door. We don't have paint on the windows. We bent our brush strokes and our bristles to go around the outside of these mutton bars and inside without touching that glass. And that's just simply learning the right size of the brush, learning how to bend your brush and your bristles, and not being afraid to put the right amount of pressure on it. And that's just a practice until you can run a straight line without using tape. Once you got there, you're good to go. And sometimes that takes years of experience, like with anything. The alternative is, taping these off or running your brush up onto the window and just coming back later with a simple razor blade. If you do that, always run a line down next to the side of the trim, because when you run your razor blade next to it and peel it, if you haven't made that division, you'll a lot of times peel fresh paint up onto your trim, and then you've got little tear-off spots that you're going to have to come back and repaint. And we don't want that. So here's your beautiful door. we're going to go down the way and do the next one. And I hope you've enjoyed and learned something here as I've talked about Kidneys for Kids and how to properly paint a door. And, we encourage other nonprofits as we do to participate in supporting nonprofits in your area, like we do with Camp Fishtails. Sometimes we don't have extra money running a nonprofit. We're usually running on a very tight budget. And if you've got time, give of yourself. This is something I've experienced doing. You have various experience, you watching this. Give of your time if you can, and give back to your community. In this case, now these campers are going to come up this week to what looks like a brand new cabin on the outside, just because we've changed all the doors from that old stale blue to this bright forest green that's got a gloss to it. It's fresh, it's clean, and it just looks gorgeous here. I'll give you a tour a little later of the video of everything, how it looks in the end. So thanks for joining me. We really appreciate it, and I hope to see you soon. And when you think about it, go to kidneysforkids.org and support our mission to recruit living kidney donors for children. I leave in June 10th. I'll be traveling to 23 cities and 22 states this summer. We'll carry out TV interviews in each city that I arrive in, each for a family with a child who needs a kidney transplant. Some of them will be done at transplant centers. Some of those will be done in areas personal to the child who we're trying to help. And we'll broadcast them all summer in hopes of recruiting a living kidney donor for that child. And we'll finish on August 2nd in New York City. We hope to have a big interview there nationally and help several children in the New York, New Jersey area. So I hope you'll join us. If you're watching your union brother or sister, I appreciate your support. I am still a union member, and you can donate your tax-deductible donations at kidneysforkids.org. Thank you very much. Have a good day.